Peace Center. And I think I know most of you, but I'm Pam Keeling, and on behalf of Julie Trank and myself, who are the co-presidents of WELCA, we want to welcome you. If we have any guests, and I didn't see any, but if we do have any guests, I just want you to know that you are more than welcome to join one of the WELCA circles, which are Bible study and fellowship groups. So if you are interested, or members, if you would like to join a circle, please let us know and we will find the right fit for you. So on behalf of WELCA, I want to thank Lisa Dahl for coordinating this program. I want to thank Sierra from the Family Peace Center for today's presentation. I also want to thank Katie and the staff from the church office who worked tirelessly to promote this event, and Pastor Rob for your leadership and your technological advice. And now I'm going to pass the baton on to Pastor Rob, who's going to give us the instructions for the Zoom program and start us with an opening prayer. Pastor Rob, I can't hear you. Are you muted?
Yeah. So thanks. So I know you've all figured out Zoom in the past year, probably had some experience, but just a couple things. We're going to leave you muted during the presentation today, but we want you to ask questions. And so there's a little chat box. So if you move your mouse around, you should have a little scroll bar pop up on the bottom that has some things. You'll see that little chat box. And so if you try clicking on that, you can practice, and you can just type it to everyone. You can just say hello for now so that we know that you know where it's at. But it's a good way. If you've got a question during Sierra's presentation, you can just type it there. If the chat box is popping up, you can just minimize that. So if that's distracting you, you can just click on the little arrow to minimize that so that it's not popping up while you're hearing the presentation, if that's bothering you. There's the view button. Depends on what kind of device you're on. Probably in the top right corner, there's a little button that says view, especially once Sierra starts her presentation. She's going to be sharing a PowerPoint screen, and so you should see the PowerPoint and her. If you're seeing something else and it's not what you want, just try clicking on that view button and changing the view and see if that gets you to how you want to be seeing it. Yeah, throughout the presentation, type away those chats and questions that you have, so that once we get to Q&A time with Sierra, then Lisa will just use those questions that are there to have some more conversation with Sierra during that time. Not related to this, but just an announcement while I've got all of you here. Just did a Facebook video, and we'll be getting the word out the rest of today, but although it looks very nice outside right now, the weather is not looking good, so we already made the decision that there is not going to be parking lot worship tomorrow. So if you were planning on being here for Mother's Day worship, unfortunately, no parking lot worship, so we'll live stream on Facebook at 9 and post that to YouTube by Monday morning. But the exciting news, maybe you heard the word this week that Governor Pritzker is moving us to the bridge to phase 5. And so we're going to go ahead and do one more parking lot worship, weather permitting, next Sunday, May 16th. But then May 23rd, we're going to resume indoor worship. And so we'll have a lot more information coming on that, but you all are getting the first news. By participating today, you get the inside scoop. So mark your calendars, Pentecost Sunday, wear some red, and plan on being at indoor worship if you're comfortable being here. With that, let's pray. Good and gracious God, we give thanks for the technology that allows us to gather and to learn together and to be in fellowship together. We give thanks for Sierra's willingness to take her time and to share the story of the work that she and so many others are doing at our Family Peace Center. We pray for that work, that ministry that is done in our community. We pray for those who utilize the resources, that this would be a way to help them move forward into healing and into next steps. We pray that you would show us how we are called to partner and to bless those in our community that need us to be a blessing to them. We pray this in all things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, I just had a technical issue, so I'm out of breath. I had to run after Zoe to have her help me. Well, hello and welcome everyone. We are pleased to share this exciting and informative event with you today, featuring the Family Peace Center. Our Saviors has a tradition of sharing God's love through various community outreach missions. And in order to facilitate adequate outreach, we often pursue learning experiences to help us know how we can best serve our mission partners, whether through financial giving, donations, volunteering, and or spiritual support. I hope you find today's experience educational, uplifting, and motivating. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Sierra Kellen, Operations Manager of the Family Peace Center. She's a Rockford native and a Lutheran high school graduate. She previously served as the City of Rockford Mayor's Office Project Manager since this project's inception. Prior to this work, she managed 2 federal court-focused programs for domestic violence under the leadership of Judge Rosemary Collins. During her time with the 17th Judicial Circuit Court, she also managed the Winnebago County Lethality Assessment Program, a partnership between the city police, sheriff's office, and local shelter program to reduce domestic violence homicide. She's a licensed professional counselor, earning her master's in clinical mental health from Denver Seminary in Littleton, Colorado, and her bachelor's in psychology and communications from Augustana College. While pursuing her degree, she served as both domestic violence advocate and as a facilitator of partner abuse intervention classes with court-ordered offenders. So she brings a tremendous expertise to this field. Sierra is excited to bring this program to us today because she is enthusiastic about seeing our community thrive. Today's presentation focuses on a very difficult topic, but not one without hope due to organizations like the Family Peace Center. So at this time, I will turn the presentation over to Sierra.
All right, well, thank you everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation with you. And when we get to a video, I'm gonna have to switch it over. So I appreciate your patience. I wanna make sure you all can hear clearly. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Thank you for the warm welcome. I really am passionate about speaking with church communities. As a person of faith myself, I know that this really difficult work isn't without hope because of community members like you all who are willing to come and learn and be a part of the solution, right? So again, I serve as the operations manager for the Rockford Family Peace Center. I'll talk a little bit more about the Family Peace Center and about the dynamics of domestic violence that we see in our community throughout the presentation. So please put any questions that come up in the chat and then we'll get back to them and we can have a more complete conversation about anything that you're curious about. And then I always like to start with just what I consider a trigger warning. Domestic violence is extremely prevalent, as is sexual violence. And you or someone you love may have experienced some of these situations in the past. And so I want you to just know that you have full permission to take care of yourself. If you need to turn off your video, ground yourself, take a walk, get a cool drink of water, whatever it is, I want you to just know that there's absolutely no judgment there. We just want you to care for yourself. And I left my contact information in the chat. My email address, if you would like to have a private conversation later on. I'll keep an eye on my email this weekend, but just want you to sort of have those resources before we get started. So I always like to start talking about the power and control wheel because I think it really sets the tone and is a great framework for talking about domestic and sexual violence work. So if you're not already familiar with the Family Peace Center, we serve survivors of domestic and sexual violence that also includes child abuse, elder abuse, and trafficking. So a really sort of inclusive definition of what those things can include so that as many survivors as possible can get services with us if they'd like to avail themselves to those services. So this resource I can certainly provide, and if you search the Duluth model, as in Duluth, Minnesota, or power and control wheel on Google, you'll get tons of variations of this wheel. But what I really like about it is that it clarifies that domestic violence is about power and control. not about anger management, right? Oftentimes we'll hear, oh, he was using substances or he was drinking and so he just lost his temper. But we like to remind people that just because you use substances or drinking doesn't mean you go around beating up everyone in your community, right? You don't beat up the guy walking down the sidewalk, but you may perpetrate violence against your intimate partner, your girlfriend, your wife. And I'm going to use a lot of gendered language today, but I want to acknowledge that domestic violence can be female to male. It can be in same-sex contexts as well. And so the statistics are about 85% of domestic violence is male perpetrated against female, but that's not always the case. But back to the wheel, what I really love about it is that we think about domestic violence as black eyes, bruises, broken bones, but there are many other dynamics involved in domestic violence. And this wheel, sort of each slice of the pie, represents a different kind of domestic violence tactic that can be used. And so a lot of these things are sort of the precursors to physical violence, such as minimizing, denying, and blaming. Oh, I used violence against you because you didn't have the house clean, or you couldn't control the children, or I was really stressed at work, right? Minimizing their responsibility around the violence that they've perpetrated, or blaming it on the person that they've perpetrated it against. And then isolation is another big one. We hear from survivors all the time that have come to Rockford because their abuser wanted to get them away from friends and family in their community. Because if your friends and family aren't there, then nobody can tell you, hey, this guy's not very, kind, you shouldn't be in a relationship with him. When it's just her and him separated from all of their support system, she won't leave because he's now controlled the entire environment. And then emotional abuse, intimidation, these things are sort of those precursors to the physical violence. Name calling, belittling, telling the partner that she's a bad parent, that she couldn't ever take care of herself on her own, she can't pay the bills, you need me, really sets the stage for them to maintain power and control in the relationship. And another huge one that we see at the Family Peace Center is economic abuse. Most survivors tell us that they can't leave, or if they do leave, the reason they go back is because he has controlled all the bank accounts. She's never worked, she doesn't have a resume, or he's destroyed her credit. And so she's unable to take care of herself. She can't buy a home. She can't get approved to rent an apartment. She has no idea where all the assets are, all the funds. She doesn't have any of those financial resources to be able to care for her and her children apart from the abusive partner. And so one of the things that the Family Peace Center does is try to resource survivors to build that resume, to start their own bank account, to help them apply for a job, maybe for the first time in their life, so that they can maintain economic self-sufficiency outside of the abusive relationship. So again, I won't go into full detail on all these, but I just like to start every presentation I do with this model because I think it opens our eyes to the complexity of domestic and sexual violence. And then the other thing that I always love to use to set the stage is something they call the cycle of violence. And this is sort of the dynamic in the relationship. We hear a lot from people when we do presentations in the community of why won't she just leave him? He's terrible to her. He's dangerous. She should just get away. And ultimately that is our hope for survivors if that's their goal. However, the dynamic in the cycle of violence is this honeymoon phase that really sucks them back in, right? The honeymoon phase is the showering of gifts. I love you. I'll never do that again. I just lost my temper. I'm so stressed at work, but I love you. I love you. I love you. Please don't leave me. I'll take care of you. I'll go to counseling. I'll go back to church, right? Whatever those promises look like to get the survivor to stay in the relationship. But then inevitably tension always starts to build again, where the survivor feels like she's walking on eggshells. Maybe there's little things, little name calling, little slaps, but not anything intense. And so she's like, oh, he's trying, it's not that bad. And then something will happen, that tension will build to a point where there's an explosive incident, where the violence really escalates. Maybe he threatens her, maybe he uses a weapon, maybe he beats her up. And so she feels like, okay, now I need to leave. But then that honeymoon phase comes right back in. He buys her flowers, apologizes, I promise, I'll never do this again. And so that is that vicious cycle. of domestic violence and sexual violence that we see and survivors tell us all the time. And so survivors end up sort of denying that that he's that bad of a guy, right? Because, oh, he just gave me all these gifts. I'm so confused. I thought he was a bad guy when he hurt me, but now he says he loves me and he's going to go back to church. He's going to go to counseling, all these things. He's going to stop drinking, whatever that looks like. And the other dynamic with this, why doesn't she leave, is that the violence actually is much more lethal after the leaving. And that brings me back to that power and control wheel we were talking about. Because if he's lost control because now she's out of the home, she's out of the environment, she walked away, he has nothing to lose in those dynamics. And so we actually see that domestic violence homicide happens more often after she leaves, not before. So it's that she's sort of separated herself from the relationship, and now he feels so desperate to get control again that he will literally take her life, and oftentimes himself as well. So you'll see in the news a lot of like domestic violence, they'll call it a homicide suicide, where that lethal relationship has gotten to that point, and then he'll kill himself often right afterwards. And so again, a trigger warning, this content is upsetting, and it breaks our heart, and it should break our heart. And so if you need to care for yourself in the context of this presentation, please do so. I won't talk too much about that for a little while. We'll take a break and move on to what is the Family Peace Center. And so the Family Peace Center was really designed out of a model that was started in San Diego called the Family Justice Center. And they started that, they were able to open in 2002. Since that time, there are about 140 centers across the United States, and actually they're international. So there's an entire alliance of family justice centers in Europe. They're in Mexico, they're in various countries across the world now, because this model makes so much sense. So we define the Family Justice Center model as a multi-agency, multidisciplinary, co-located service center that provides a centralized intake process and then coordinated services under one roof. So the Family Peace Center is the name of our local Family Justice Center here in Rockford. And as a part of our steering strategic planning, we really heard from the community that justice means a lot of different things to different people in our community, and that may not be the safest wording for people when they're looking for services. We also have a criminal justice center, we have a juvenile justice center, and those are associated with our local jail and our juvenile detention center. And so we really didn't want there to be an association with sort of criminal justice as a part of this, because many people don't engage law enforcement at all. And so we really selected the Family Peace Center to better sort of encapsulate what we're looking for. We're hoping to provide families peace and safety. And so just to reiterate again, our victimization areas that we serve are domestic violence, sexual violence and abuse, child abuse, elder abuse, and trafficking. And so anyone in any part of their journey who's experienced any of those victimizations can get services with us. It doesn't have to be within 3 months of the event. Even if they experienced maybe sexual violence 10 years ago and they're starting to have, triggering symptoms, maybe some PTSD that's come up, they can come to us and we can connect them with a therapist that specializes in sexual violence. So a little bit about where we came from and how we got to this point. We have a long history in this community of trust building across disciplines around domestic violence. And I would say about 30 years of work has been done in this area. And that really started with a family violence coordinating council, and our courts really took the lead on this. And so Judge Rosemary Collins was sort of the figurehead of a lot of this work in the early days. And so the Family Violence Coordinating Council coordinated between courts, law enforcement, and local service providers to start to work together, share information, so that if a survivor was encountered maybe on a 911 call, enforcement would know to call our local court. And with that sort of history, we were awarded our first federal grant in this community back in 2011. And since that time, we have really built a system of various programs to enhance our response to domestic violence. That includes working with law enforcement, working with counselors and advocates, working with our prosecutor's office, probation. And so those programs really set the stage. There had already been some trust built between these disciplines in our community. And then when the Mayor's Office of Domestic Violence and Human Trafficking Prevention was established in the beginning of 2018, once Mayor Tom McNamara was elected, he hired Jen Ketchapalia to manage that office. And Jen set out to do community interviews to help her understand where the gaps were in this community. So she interviewed about 230 people, and she established a gap analysis that's available on the Mayor's Office website. If you wanted to go check it out, it's about 15 pages, bullet pointed, of all the gaps that she identified. And she interviewed faith leaders and survivors and attorneys and therapists about what they were seeing and hearing in the community, from executive directors of organizations all the way down to boots on the ground advocates. And they really figured that until we can sort of coordinate our services in a centralized location, we're not going to solve many of these issues. And so the Family Justice Center grant was written for back in 2018, and that was awarded to this community in October of that year. I was hired as the project manager in December of that year, and we really got to work in the planning. So after hiring the project manager role, the city raised funds and really worked on sort of a nonprofit basis to raise about $64,000 to bring in the Alliance for Hope International, and they're the technical assistance provider for family justice centers. And they came into our community, they did a study tour and strategic planning with our community. I'll show you a picture a little later, but we had the largest strategic planning in the history of the Alliance. We had 225 community members from Rockford participate in a 2-day event to really vision cast around establishing our local family justice center to really meet the needs of our Rockford community. And then obviously we made a lot of adjustments to open in the middle of the pandemic. We opened July 20th of 2020, and we've learned a lot in about 9 months of operation. So I'm excited to share that with you. But before I do that, I'd like to show you the video that we put together with Pablo Corona, a local videographer, to really demonstrate the need to the community and hopefully incite some excitement among community members. So we showed this at a breakfast, and we raised about $43,000 in an hour toward starting this process. And some of you may have been present at that event, but this video is very powerful. It interviews 3 survivors. So again, trigger warning around this. They're gonna talk a little bit about their experience with violence. So just care for yourself throughout this. Is about a 10-minute video. And then when we're done, I'll give you a little virtual tour of the center with some images. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and switch off my video and put myself on mute so that the video quality is a little bit better. And then we'll come back together after the video plays. So give me just a second here.
Domestic violence, think of this. It accounts for 1/3 of all of our police calls for service. It accounts for over 34% of all of our violent crime. It literally comes from every single precinct, every neighborhood, and every ward in our city. There's not one group that is touched by domestic violence. All of us are affected by domestic violence.
I met him when I was in elementary school. I was in 5th grade. And he was actually like my first kiss.
And I guess that's how I would begin it all, was I finally met the man of my dreams. Everything I ever needed to hear was said. We will have a family and be together forever.
We developed a relationship. I want to say I was around 21. I knew he always had a crush on me, you know. As a little girl, he would kiss me and pull my hair and run around the corner, and I'll be mad and chase him, you know, being kids.
The first time I remember like something really bad was I was actually at the intersection of East State and Alpine. He grabbed the side of my head like that and just started banging my head into the window. I remember one time like laying on my kitchen floor. had a little bit of like blood on my face. And like I remember my baby like being next to me and like wiping like blood on his like little baby hand. And that's something like that, like I'll have nightmares about for the rest of my life. I was going to bed and he came up behind me and he kicked me down. And he told me that it was gonna hurt. And he started kicking me over and over, all over my body. Covered my nose and my mouth and told me to go to sleep. He told me over and over again that this was it and that I was gonna die. After a couple of hours, his cell phone rang and the sun was out now. And I just saw the door and I ran. I ran to the next apartment building over. And there was a girl taking her baby out to the car and it was probably 8 a.m. And I imagined that I looked pretty bad. And I just said, I'm so sorry, can I please use your phone? I need an ambulance.
I got pregnant, and he said to me that anyone who's working and pregnant isn't loved, and I want to take care of you, and you don't need to work. And it's like, I'm catching a break. I'm catching a break for once in my life. Somebody wants to do nice and something that I've always needed and wanted. And this was a long, happening over a long period of time. But before I knew it, I was just in too deep and had a baby and trying to hold a family together and cut off from my family and friends and work. And I was turning in receipts and change and asking for money. And I had nothing. I couldn't wear makeup. I couldn't wear women's clothing. I wasn't allowed to use soap. My abuser's choice form of physical abuse was strangulation. Actually, I guess it's considered choking, but it's really strangulation. To the point where I would wake up and not know what happened, and then he would tell me that, oh, you hyperventilated. And I was like, well, no, I remember you on me and holding me down and strangling me. And then I would be so disoriented that he would convince me that maybe I did get that worked up. Well, number one, I felt it was my fault and I did something wrong and apologize and do better next time. And then it was, you don't want to tell anybody because they're sure as heck going to want you to get out of that relationship. And there goes your family. There goes your chance. And I can do this. I'm better than this. I can hold my family together. And he loves me. I just did something wrong.
He wasn't present when I returned home. A few minutes later, I hear him coming in the door. I'm upstairs in my bedroom looking for clothes for the next morning. And he came in the room and he was looking so deranged. And he said, I'm getting ready to kill you. Really? Kill me? And he was like, yeah, kill you. And when he put out the shotgun, I'm like, oh, he is serious. He wants to kill me. And before he shot me, I'm talking in my head, like, Lord Jesus, please don't let him kill me and don't let it hurt. So I braced myself on the floor and he shot me in my thigh. I didn't know at that time how many bullets he had in the shotgun. He continued to shoot me. We never said anything to each other. We just made eye contact. Finally, I'm saying to myself, Lord, how many more times are you gonna allow him to shoot me? Please make him stop. He went and put the shotgun back in the closet. He came in, he looked at me to see if I had expired. I took a deep breath and I hung my head down as though I had passed away. And I could hear him running down the stairs. I hear him leaving in my car. And then I began to look over my life and ask the questions, Lord Jesus, is this how I'm supposed to leave this world? Because if it is, this is a mean, cruel way for me to go. I haven't did anything.
There's not a day goes by in the city of Rockford that we don't respond to some type of domestic disturbance call, whether it's a violent domestic or a verbal domestic. There is not a day that we don't go to a domestic type call. So as far as service calls for the police, it is definitely in the top 3, usually top 1 or 2.
The idea to me that we have young people in our community who are dealing with really tragic and horrific situations in their own home, who are then having to leave their home, go to school, and do what we all want them to do, focus on their studies. How can they simply focus on their studies when they're worried about their mother or their father's safety or their sister's safety? We need to make sure that we are stemming the cycle of violence.
A shocking statistic would be that 75% of our juvenile offenders in violent crimes have been either a witness or a victim in a previous domestic violence report. The children that see violence and grow up around violence become violent offenders.
So we in the court system deal with violent crime every day. There's so much of it that it almost feels like we have buckets under a waterfall, and it just keeps coming and coming. And we can't stem the tide of violent crime in our community until we do something about domestic violence, because this violent crime is directly related to domestic violence in the homes. And until we do something about that, we won't stop crime in our community. We can't stop it until we get on top of that waterfall, turn off that spigot of violent crime in the home, and that will stop violent crime in our community.
When we talk about domestic violence in our community, historically, we have relied heavily on courts and police to respond to this issue. We are moving into a time in our community where we recognize that we have to put a larger focus on the survivor. When we talk about what's best for a survivor and what is going to get them out of this situation, we have to talk about a family justice center. A family justice center is a place where a survivor and their children can go and know without any question that they are believed, that they are walking into a place where the people who are there want to serve them, who will partner with them and link arms with them and find their way out of the situation that they're in with restorative services and therapeutic counseling and any other service that they might need. And when we talk to survivors in our community, no matter where they come from, no matter what area in our county or our city they live in, they all tell us the same thing.
I know from my experience, I had no idea where to go. I had nowhere to live. I had a child. I needed therapy. I mean, everything. And I think with a family justice center, to have resources under one roof, guidance through the whole process, and support would be beneficial to anybody.
And to have a place that you could go to where people really cared and really believed you, it would have made breathing a little bit easier. I wouldn't have been so scared. Because every single day I was terrified for myself and for my child. Terrified. You don't know fear until you're feeling those things. And it's terrible.
It shouldn't have to be that stressful. They should have a place right here in town, and they would greet you with open arms and nobody judge you and make you feel less than a woman because you have gotten beat up. It's not your fault, you know?
I've been on the bench for almost 30 years. We've tried many different approaches to stem the tide of domestic violence. It's been proven that a family justice center can make a difference in the lives of our children, but it won't work unless we're all in this together.
We're in! 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 We're in!
All right. Well, I don't know about you, but I think that that was a pretty inspiring way to end that video, to show so many of our community agencies that wanted to be in on this process. And so I haven't watched that video in a couple of years, but we did that back in 2018 to really get people excited about what the Family Justice Center in Rockford could offer our community. And people responded overwhelmingly. So we got really right to work from that point. And so this little timeline just kind of demonstrates some of the milestones that we crossed getting to opening our center. So the Mayor's Office of Domestic Violence and Human Trafficking Prevention was established January 1 of 2018. We hired the project manager, that was myself, on December 10th of 2018. And then we did our study tour where the Alliance for Hope came in, and they interviewed partner agency executive directors and staff about their willingness to work together. Was there trust between organizations? Would they be willing to co-locate? And you know, they really felt that our community was ready at that time. So 3 months later, we did our strategic planning in Rockford at Heartland Community Church and had 225 community members there. On the next slide, I'll show you that picture. That was the largest strategic planning that the Alliance had ever participated in. It was really cool to see so many people give of their time to make sure that we could cast a vision that represented Rockford. And then we opened for first day of services on July 20th of 2020. So that strategic planning process here is the photo of everybody. So if any of you were there, maybe you can find your face somewhere small in there. And then all those sticky notes that you see on those boards behind everyone were the vision that we cast. Everyone wrote their ideas up on the board and we stuck it up on these big boards, and then we organized them by category, and that really was the kickoff of, we seated about 6 different work groups to focus on things like governance and service delivery and research, community engagement. We even had a faith leaders committee to talk about what chaplaincy might look like in the center, what it would look like to educate other faith communities about domestic violence so that they could better respond to parishioners who might be experiencing domestic or sexual violence. So it was a really exciting time in our community. And then we got right to work planning the physical space. So the next slide will be a series of pictures of the interior of the center that I'm excited to show you. But before I do that, I just want to talk a little bit about the physical space. So my role is technically funded by the City of Rockford, but we also have a 501c3 and really have a hybrid model in terms of our governance structure. So the city offers us a lot of the city resources that help the Family Peace Center run and keep our costs low. So the property that we rent right now is right across from the Coronado Performing Arts Center on Main Street. We're closer to the corner of Main and Park. So we're that whole corner first floor space. It's about 11,000 square feet. But the city kept our rent extremely low, way lower than what would be market value in that area. And then they also were able to roll in costs related to internet, janitorial, our other utilities costs. And so we're able to keep that funded under the city grant that we were awarded back in 2018. So that grant was 18 months of planning, and now we're into the 18 months of actual implementation. And then we did need to do a major renovation of the north end of that space because it was one giant open room and it just really wasn't usable space for us. So we built interior to that space, a reception, 2 intake rooms, a private office for Rockford sexual assault counseling, a secured waiting space complete with a snack bar, and then a children's space and a teen space in that, which I will show you pictures of next. But all of that labor was donated by our building trades and really frankly wouldn't have been possible. It was about $113,000 worth of labor that they donated. And then we used $50,000 of donor raised funds to purchase the building materials for them to complete that renovation. And we also had furniture largely donated, again, using events raised and donor raised funds to pay for the remainder of that furniture. And then design services by Molly Kahn from Concept Design And then some donors donated the actual materials. And then she did all the design work for free. So it's such a beautiful space. When survivors walk in, they say, like, this feels like I'm at someone's home. It's so comfortable and cozy and feels safe and clean. It's really exciting. I get to review all of our exit surveys, so I get all the feedback from survivors and compile that into a document for our staff to review. But it just warms my heart when I get to hear how welcome and safe they feel in our space. So when I'm over operations, I manage all supplies, our snack budget, and supplies is both just, paper products and all that good stuff, but primarily it's hygiene products, it's baby items, it's the things that we try to give survivors when they're going out on their own for the first time, right? If they've got a baby, we've got diapers galore and formula and bottles. We've got feminine care products. We've got shampoo and conditioner, laundry detergent, because of donations from the community. So whenever we start to run low, we put something out on our Facebook or in our newsletter, and community members just ship us donations. It's been really incredible to see how the community wants to care for survivors in need. And then I oversee sort of our grant-funded staff, and then interns and volunteers. I manage sort of the bill stuff, the rent, all that good stuff with the city. And then I do just need to give a brief shout out to the city's maintenance and IT department. They take really good care of us on a regular basis. So as a nonprofit, we don't have to contract with some other agency. We use those city resources on a regular basis. So it's a really great hybrid model. And I think it just demonstrates that our city really cares about survivors. So now for the fun part, here's a little virtual tour and pictures. So this is our front reception space. When you come in off of Main Street on our Main Street main door, if you look to your left, you'll see Mary at the front, and the design services, they did this cool little picture frame around our window with the Hope Grows Here to make it a really warm and welcoming space. And so our staff, Mary and Dominique, are our front desk intake navigators. They'll greet you, check you in. As a survivor, we have them fill out a little conflict check form. We just make sure we're not already serving the other party in the relationship. Assuming that's not the case, they're welcomed into our secure waiting space. But while they're here, while we're doing that quick background check, if you did a 180 from the window, you would see this really sweet little waiting space. That back wall is actually a mural picture of the Rock River. And so the design services, they really tried to incorporate things that were local to Rockford. And when we consulted our Survivor Voices Committee about what they wanted to see in the space, they said water's really calming and healing, and the tree is sort of our logo. So they were able to find an image of the river with that beautiful tree in bloom, and then blew that up as sort of a wallpaper, and made this a cozy little space. So even when they first walk in the door, they're greeted with warm, welcoming, sort of neutral tones. And you'll see that kind of throughout the space. So once they come through the secure waiting space, or the reception space, they come into our secured waiting space. And this picture is taken from the vantage point of the back of the room. So you can see there's 4 separate waiting little seating areas. And we did that intentionally because we wanted survivors at every step along the way to feel like they had choice, right? That they could make a choice. Do I want to sit at the table, or do I want to sit on a couch? Do I want to read a book? Do I want to play a little game to distract my mind? Maybe I want to color. Survivors come in active crisis, and oftentimes things are really intense. And so this space has low lighting. So over at the couches, you can see there are lamps on, and we turned off the fluorescent lights. And then we have essential oils going, so it just smells really calm, like lavender. And there's soft music playing in the background. So it just creates a really calm environment for survivors to sort of relax, and then we can take care of business. At the very front, you'll see our snack bar. So survivors are welcome to help themselves to snacks, whatever they'd like. There's coffee, water, juice, soda, snacks, and we also have a couple donors who provide us meals. So if a survivor is going to be with us all day, which is possible if she's doing an order of protection, or maybe she needs to meet with police, we can order like Jimmy John's. McDonald's has given us coupons for meals. We can even go get kids meals if the whole family is with us. Because, Cheez-Its are great for an hour or two, but, you know, when it's 2 o'clock and you've been there for 4 hours, you need an actual meal with some substance. So we're really grateful to be able to provide that as well. Then we have a children's space. This is for 0 to 10 years old, and this is supervised by a staff person. But this space was all funded by a state grant and some donors, and it's just a really warm, fun, kid-friendly space for kids to be kids, so they don't have to overhear the trauma and the serious conversation that needs to happen between mom and staff. And then for older kids, we have a separate space. This is our teen space, again, designed by Molly Kahn from Concept Design, but just really fun, meant for older kids, 11 to 17, and they can come. Those tables are all whiteboards, so they can draw with markers on there. They've got ping pong, they've got a desk space, so if they do want to do homework, they can do that. We've got computers, so they can access anything that they need for school on the computers, or they can just play and be kids. There's an Xbox, there's a PS4. Kids are welcome to have fun in this space. And then these are our intake rooms. So they're nearly identical, meant to be really warm, have that natural light. All of our windows do have a really nice mirrored film, so you can't see from the outside inside our windows, but they can see out. So we oftentimes will close the blinds if they're a little anxious, but the natural light is really nice. And then the second room, you can see that little computer chair. We have a computer that was donated by the Administrative Office of Illinois Courts so that we can do remote orders of protection from our space, which is huge because that means at least one less time that they have to go to the courthouse, which survivors tell us consistently that's the scariest place in the community for them to go, because they have to go through security and they're likely going to see their abuser in court and any of the abuser's friends and family that he brought with him to court. And so if we can do it virtually from the Family Peace Center, it's just a lot less traumatic for survivors. Additionally, we're working with the 17th Circuit to figure out a way to do the plenary orders of protection hearings from the court or from the Family Peace Center as well, so that they don't even have to go for that hearing date if possible. So this is a list of all of our partners. This list is a living, breathing list because it changes every day. We have more and more partners coming on all the time. One of the partnerships that I love to point out that's new is Winnebago County Animal Services. So if a survivor needs to go into shelter, she can't bring her dog or cat with her because, you know, of the allergies and everything else that come with that. But Winnebago County Animal Services will take in that animal under protective custody. And then we partner with a pet fostering agency called Care for Pets, and they can place that pet with a family until the survivor is in an apartment or somewhere where she can have her animal safely. So that animal gets taken care of and the family can get what they need in terms of shelter, knowing that their pet is safe. Just a really cool, creative partnership that we've established. And then you can see governmental and non-governmental partnerships. We work with RAMP on anything disability related. Workforce Connection does everything for employment for survivors. That can include getting them a social security card, helping them develop a resume. And then many of the hospital systems are coming on. We're talking about building a sexual assault nurse examiner program for anyone who needs to go to the hospital and get an examination. And then legal services are another big need for our survivors. So just some quick facts. We've served 300 clients to date in just over 9 months. 78.6% of those clients have children. So as you can imagine, when you've got a child in common with your abusive partner, they're not going anywhere, right? There's going to be joint custody. There's going to be exchanges or supervised visitation often. And so we walk with survivors through navigating that process. We work with Children's Safe Harbor. They do safe exchanges where they're sort of the middle, so that the survivor and the abusive partner don't have to communicate. Everything should be communicated through the center, and then they enter and exit through separate entrances so that the survivor and the abuser don't have an altercation. Safer for families, reduces lethality, and reduces a lot of stress for survivors as well. And then you could just see our racial and ethnic breakdown here. So about 47% of our clients right now identify as Caucasian, 40% as African American, 11% as Latino or Latina, and then 2% Asian. And our community engagement committee is looking at these demographics and figuring out how we can better serve some of those underserved populations, especially our refugee community here in Rockford. they have some unique barriers that we're looking to really do some outreach around. And then you can see our top 3 referrals: housing, mental health, and legal services are the top 3 requests from survivors. Just a quick thing about our funding and governance structure. Right now we're funded about 75% through state grants. About 12% is local funding. That's events that we do, fundraising, golf outings, things like that, and then donations. And about 13% is our federal grant that funds us as well. We are looking to develop and expand all the time. We say that we're building the plane as we fly it. So we meet with staff on a regular basis and say what's working, where are the challenges, where are the gaps, and then we find agencies in the community that can partner with us to better meet those needs. So that's why we're always bringing on new partners. Not all of them have office space in the center at this time. Some of them are on call or referral partners. And we just sort of work that out with the agencies about what's the best way to deliver services. And then our next focus is really heavily around youth. As you heard the chief of police mention in that video, 75% of our violent juvenile offenders today have a history of being exposed to domestic or sexual violence. And so if we don't take care and intervene with those kids while they're young, we know what's going to happen when they're adults, right? And that's how the generational cycle of domestic violence is perpetuated. So we're really trying to start addressing youth better. And then we were gifted a building on East State Street for an expansion, but right now it's 4 concrete walls and a concrete floor. So we're doing some planning around that. We'll be seating a strategic planning committee. And in the next 5 years, we hope to do a major capital campaign to build out that space so that we can expand, so we can have a hospital clinic, so we can have a daycare, so we can do all the things that survivors say that they need. And so just want to end by, sort of answering this question, because you might be saying, how can I get involved? And there are several ways. One is education, right? We need to educate the community about our services and about domestic violence. So if you have a book club or a community group, I mean, presentations like this are a perfect example of ways that we can get information out. And then certainly if you feel called to support us with physical needs or cash donations, as I mentioned, we do a lot of basic necessity items for survivors, so you can always check in with us about what our needs are. We go through diapers fast, and we can always use those cash donations to sort of like fill in the needs where there are gaps. And then attend events. We do a lot of fundraisers and community events in the community. Obviously 2020 was a weird year, but we're getting back into that. We'll be offering some fundraisers in the next year that we're excited about, including a golf outing in September and an outdoor event at the Burpee in July. So stay tuned for more information about that. If you aren't following our newsletter, I highly recommend you go to our website, rockfordfamilypeacecenter.org, and sign up for the newsletter so you can stay in the know. And then if you're interested in volunteering, we have some administrative type things, like you can join our events committee or our community engagement committee. We also have a faith leaders committee, if that's something you feel called to, and that has 2 focuses, one around chaplaincy and the other is around how can we partner with churches to educate the community, do presentations, train people, that kind of thing. Or if you want to serve in the center, we do require a 40-hour domestic violence training. But if you have a lot of time and that's something you might be interested in, again, I left my email in the chat. Please send me an email and we can have a conversation. So I want to thank you for your time today and open it up for questions. But I will leave, this is my contact information again. Feel free to reach out to me, or certainly Lisa or Pastor Rob, Pam, any of them can provide you my contact information as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sierra. I have reviewed the chat box. I don't see any questions, probably because you covered everything. If anybody has a question, I'll wait a few minutes to see if anything comes in. I'm thinking of the video, and I want to just say we're in. I think most of you probably feel that it's likely we will be pursuing a mission partner relationship with you in the future. I want to thank you so much for being with us today. For those of you that don't know, this is Sierra's day off. She volunteered to present this today with us, and we really appreciate that you could be here. I do want to mention that Family Peace Center will be receiving a $100 donation from WELCA to honor that you were here with us today. And it is also, FPC is the mission of our month. So at the end of the month, we will finalize that amount and be sending it off to you. And there's also a $1,000 matching fund with that. So that should be a pretty substantial donation for the Family Peace Center.
Thank you.
And as many of you heard, there are many ways we can support them in addition to finances. So I hope some of you will somehow get involved with this organization. It's definitely needed, and it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity for us to continue to support you.
Absolutely. Well, I'll go ahead and stop share so you all can see each other.
On behalf of Mission Cabinet, we would certainly like to thank you for this presentation and thank WELCA for bringing it to our attention. And as already mentioned, you are the mission of the month, and we'll push that aggressively. And hopefully we get you some volunteers as well. But thank you very much, and thank you to WELCA for really leading this, and Lisa and Pam and everyone who had something to do with this event. Are you an Augustana graduate?
I am an Augustana graduate.
Wonderful school. We are too. We're sitting here saying,
awesome.
Go for Augie.
That's right. I know, it's a small world. It's been fun, actually. I know several Augie grads in the community, and I've met a few Denver Seminary grads as well, so that's fun.
Augustana is a special spot for us, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thank
you very much.
Thank you.
Did anyone else have a comment or question for Sierra? Carol?
Am I muted? No. Well, I put something in the chat box, but I don't know that it went anyplace. This was an absolutely outstanding presentation. Sierra, my one question would be, has there been consideration or planning at all for widespread education targeting the potential population needing the service? In other words, I'm aware by the time the individual would call the police department, it's probably been going on serious for quite some time. And if a person was in an abusive situation, you know, would there be a means that they could learn about, hear about, and know about Peace Center where they could go at least to get some upfront counseling and discussion?
Yeah, great question, Carol. Thank you for that. And I would say we have a community engagement committee that is committed to finding areas in the community where we can present information. And one of the things that we're talking about is maybe an awareness campaign where maybe we're actually doing a commercial right on one of the main TV networks or a radio spot, something like that, to get information out. And then out of the mayor's office, there is an initiative around youth where they're trying to work with Rockford Public Schools to try to get information into the schools, because we know that many survivors tell us that their first encounter with an abusive relationship was their high school boyfriend or girlfriend. So it's happening early. It's not happening for the first time when they're into adulthood. It's starting pretty young, and when they don't have resources to understand how to say, I'm overwhelmed, I need to step back, I don't know how to leave this relationship. And so we actually have an educators team made up of teachers who are really strategizing around how to better resource in the schools. And so the Family Peace Center is one piece of the mayor's office full initiative around some of these areas. And so I'm not actively a part of all of those committees, but there are committees seated to try to address some of these things. But certainly we rely on members of the community to say, hey, here's a great place where you might present information. So if you ever have ideas, feel free to send us that information. We'd be happy to pursue it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did see a comment from Diana in the chat about RSAC. Absolutely, RSAC is one of our very dear partners. And if you didn't get a chance to read all of that list, Remedies Renewing Lives is our domestic violence agency in the community. They have our shelter, so we rely on them for the shelter. We rely on Rockford Sexual Assault Counseling for really anything in the realm of sexual violence. They have additional layers of confidentiality around their work. And so when a survivor comes to us first and says, this is what's happened, we immediately say, we'd like to get you connected with our agency that's an expert in this area. And so we absolutely could not do this work without RSAC and remedies, and Rockford Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation does all our trafficking work. And so we are not, the Family Peace Center is not the expert in every area. We partner with all of these great other agencies to really meet those very specific needs. Prairie State Legal Services touches everything legal related. NIU College of Law actually does a lot of consultation. Their law students do a lot of consultation with our clients. Obviously the police department handles all that. The prosecutor's office handles all those things. So we really connect those survivors to where they need to go. And the Family Peace Center is sort of the navigator of those services.
Thank you so much. That was, your presentation has been wonderful.
Thank you, Diana.
Carolyn Montgomery, did you have a question? Oh, I don't. Did anyone else have a question or comment? Well, again, thank you. It was very uplifting. And I just want to wish everyone a happy Mother's Day. And thank you for being here today. And like I said, hopefully our next get together will be in person. Pam, did you have any closing comment, or Pastor Rob?
Well, I echo the comments that Sierra, the program that you just gave was wonderful. And I did have the opportunity to tour the Peace Center, and it is an incredible facility and you're doing amazing work. And I'm so glad that our Saviors is ready to be a partner in your efforts.
Absolutely. Thanks, Pam.
Anyone else? Okay, everyone. That brings us to a close. So,
yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was wonderful. It was very informative, very inspiring.
Thank you, and thank you to WELCA. Your time today.
Yep. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Enjoy your day.
Bye.